I'll never forget how they invited me into that conference room that day, not to reward me, but to kick me out of the company I'd built like it was my own home. The mahogany table gleamed under fluorescent lights as three executives sat across from me, their faces arranged in practiced sympathy. "We've decided to go in a different direction," they said, sliding the termination papers toward me. "You're just not a team player." 8 years of 60-hour weeks, and it all came down to those 5 words. My name is Rachel Whitmore, and at 35, I'd built my entire identity around being exceptional at my job. Senior Project Director at Lunark Systems in Austin, Texas, a mid-tier tech company that promised innovation but delivered mediocrity wrapped in buzzwords. I wasn't the type to grab drinks after work or laugh at the CEO's golf stories. I came in early, stayed late, and delivered results that made quarterly reports shine. My crime? I refused to pretend incompetence was strategy. The termination meeting lasted exactly 12 minutes. HR sat in the corner, typing notes on her laptop, avoiding eye contact like I had something contagious. My direct supervisor, Marcus, kept adjusting his tie, the same nervous tick he'd had when I caught him inflating project costs 6 months ago. And there was our CEO, James Thornton, leaning back in his chair with the satisfied look of a man who'd just removed a splinter. "Your technical skills are unquestionable," James said, his Texas drawl making the words sound almost kind. "But leadership isn't just about results. It's about culture fit, collaboration, being part of the Lunark family." Family. I almost laughed. This family had been skimming 15% off client invoices and calling it operational overhead. This family had promoted Marcus's nephew to senior developer when the kid couldn't debug a simple loop. This family had ignored 3 harassment complaints because the perpetrator brought in 7-figure accounts. 2 weeks prior, I'd made my fatal error. During a budget meeting with 12 department heads, I'd presented actual data showing our resource allocation was hemorrhaging money into phantom projects. I had spreadsheets, timestamps, a paper trail that led straight to executive bonuses funded by non-existent deliverables. James had thanked me for my passion and tabled the discussion. The next day, my keycard stopped working for the executive floor. They offered me 2 months severance and a glowing recommendation letter, pre-written, naturally. All I had to do was sign an NDA thick enough to use as a doorstop. "This protects everyone," Marcus said, finally meeting my eyes. "Your reputation, our intellectual property. Clean break." I signed it. Not because I was beaten, but because I'd learned something valuable in 8 years at Lunark. The most dangerous enemy is the one who follows all the rules while breaking them. The walk to my desk felt like a funeral procession. Jennifer from accounting suddenly remembered an urgent phone call. David, who'd eaten lunch with me every Tuesday for 3 years, became fascinated with his monitor. Only Sarah, the junior developer I'd mentored, had the courage to whisper, "I'm sorry," as security watched me pack my personal items into a cardboard box. The security guard, Tony, who'd shown me pictures of his grandkids just last week, escorted me through the lobby. My heels clicked against the marble floor, each step echoing like a countdown. Employees pretended not to notice, but I caught their reflections in the glass walls, watching the execution of someone who'd committed the cardinal sin of corporate America, telling the truth without political cover. Outside, the Austin heat hit me like a wall. March in Texas was already pushing 90 degrees, and I stood there in my best blazer, holding a box containing 8 years compressed into a ceramic mug, a stress ball shaped like a brain, and a photo from the company retreat where I'd been named Project Director of the Year. My phone buzzed, a text from an unknown number. They did the same to me, and 5 others. "We should talk." I deleted it immediately. Then I sat in my car, air conditioning on full blast, and did something I hadn't done since my father's funeral. I screamed, not a sob or a whimper, but a raw, primal sound that came from somewhere deeper than my lungs. When I finished, my throat was raw, and my hands had stopped shaking. They called me not a team player. They had no idea that I'd been studying their playbook for 8 years, learning every weakness, every shortcut, Every place they'd cut corners, believing no one was smart enough to notice. They thought they were removing a problem. They were creating a competitor. The first week after termination, I didn't leave my apartment. I sat in my downtown Austin loft, watching the city move below like ants following invisible trails. My savings would last 6 months if I was careful, 3 if I wasn't. The recruitment emails started immediately. Word travels fast in tech circles, but every offer felt like accepting defeat. Senior positions at companies just like Lunark, where I'd play the same games with different faces. My laptop sat open on the kitchen counter, cursor blinking in an empty document titled Next Steps. Funny how 8 years of strategic planning couldn't prepare you for your own execution. The apartment felt smaller each day, walls pressing in with the weight of questions I couldn't answer. Was I really that difficult? Had I misread everything? Then I started digging. It began innocently enough, checking LinkedIn to see who'd viewed my profile. That's when I noticed patterns. Employees leaving Lunark in clusters, always the ones who'd spoken up in meetings, questioned budgets, or refused to sign off on suspicious invoices. Their departures were spaced strategically, never enough at once to raise flags. But over 18 months, 23 people had been restructured, pursued other opportunities, or been deemed not aligned with company values. I pulled up my old files, everything I'd backed up to my personal cloud before they'd locked me out. Financial reports, project timelines, email threads I'd BCC'd to my personal account when things felt wrong. The picture that emerged was worse than I'd thought. Lunark wasn't just skimming money. They were billing clients for entire teams that didn't exist, outsourcing work to offshore contractors while charging premium rates for local expertise. My phone buzzed again. Another unknown number. Check your email. Proton Mail. R. Dwight Whitmore, 35. I'd never created a Proton Mail account, but when I typed in my name and birthday as the password, it opened. One message sat in the inbox. Sender anonymous. Rachel. You're not crazy. You're not difficult. You're dangerous to them because you see clearly. There are 17 of us now. All former Lunark employees, all terminated for similar reasons. We've been documenting everything. We need someone who understands the full picture, someone who knows where the bodies are buried. Tuesday, 8 p.m., Cosmic Coffee on South Congress. Look for the woman reading Kafka. I deleted the message, cleared the browser cache, and spent the next 3 days deciding whether paranoia was wisdom or weakness. Tuesday came. I arrived at 7:45, ordered a black coffee, and pretended to work on my laptop. At exactly 8 p.m., a woman in her 40s sat down in the corner booth, pulling out a worn copy of The Trial. I recognized her immediately. Linda Morrison, former CFO, resigned to spend time with family 6 months ago. Her family lived in Seattle. She'd never left Austin. They destroyed my reputation, she said without preamble when I sat down. 20 years building my career, gone because I questioned why our R&D budget was buying property in the Caymans. Over the next hour, 3 more people joined us. Miguel, a former security architect who discovered backdoors in client systems. Amy, an HR manager who tried to report sexual harassment by a board member. Thomas, a sales director who'd refused to lie about product capabilities. We call ourselves the Blacklist, Linda said, sliding a folder across the table. Every document, every suspicious transaction, every client complaint buried by legal. We've been building a case, but we needed someone who understood the technical side, someone who could connect the dots. I opened the folder. Bank statements, wire transfers, shell companies with Lunark board members as silent partners. It was a masterpiece of corporate crime, elegant in its complexity. They'd been using client projects as money laundering operations, inflating costs by 300%, splitting the excess between executive bonuses and offshore accounts. What's your plan? I asked. Exposure, Miguel said. We leak it to the press. Let the FBI sort it out. I shook my head. That's revenge. I'm talking about justice. Linda leaned forward. What's the difference? Revenge leaves you empty and them as victims in the public eye. Justice makes sure they can never do this again to anyone. I pulled out my phone, showed them something I'd been working on since day 3 of unemployment. A business proposal. Not just any business, a direct competitor to Lunark, built on transparent practices, employee ownership, and most importantly, staffed by the very people they'd thrown away. You want to steal their clients? Amy asked. No, I said, closing the folder. I want to offer their clients what Lunark promised but never delivered. Honest pricing, actual expertise, and solutions that work. We don't need to destroy them. We just need to be better. The destruction will happen naturally, like a tree rotting from the inside. Thomas laughed, bitter and sharp. You really think we can build a company from nothing? Not from nothing, I corrected. From everything they taught us not to be. The silence stretched, heavy with possibility. Then Linda raised her coffee cup. To the blacklist, to the ones who weren't team players. We clinked cups, and I felt something I hadn't experienced since my termination. Purpose. They'd labeled me unemployable, difficult, not collaborative. They were right. I wasn't going to collaborate with corruption anymore. I was going to dismantle it. Building a company from rage and righteousness sounds romantic until you're sitting in a borrowed conference room at 2 a.m., running on gas station coffee and the collective fury of 17 displaced professionals. We met in Linda's accountant's office after hours. She'd kept good relationships despite Lunark's smear campaign. The fluorescent lights hummed like angry wasps as we mapped out what would become Echelon Core. We need initial capital, Linda said, spreading financial projections across the table. Even bootstrapping, we're looking at minimum $200,000 to operate for 6 months. I can contribute $30,000, Miguel offered. My severance plus savings. Others chimed in with what they could spare. Amy had $20,000 from her 401k early withdrawal. Thomas could manage $40,000 from selling his boat, the one he'd bought to celebrate his promotion at Lunark. By dawn, we'd pooled $170,000, close, but not enough. That's when Sarah called. My former mentee, still trapped inside Lunark, voice shaking with barely contained excitement. Rachel, you need to see this. I'm sending you something through Signal. The encrypted message contained a single link to an internal Lunark memo. They were hemorrhaging talent. 3 more developers had quit that week, following Sarah's lead. The development team was down 40%, and project deadlines were slipping. Better yet, their biggest client, Meridian Healthcare, was threatening to pull their contract over missed deliverables. There are 12 of us still inside, Sarah whispered. We're not sabotaging anything. We don't need to. We're just working exactly to spec. No more unpaid overtime. No more fixing management's mistakes off the clock. It's chaos. I felt the pieces clicking into place like a lock opening. Sarah. Who's leading the Meridian project now? Marcus's nephew, the one who couldn't debug a loop. I hung up and turned to the team. We don't need all the money up front. We just need enough to look legitimate for one meeting. The plan was surgical. Through our network, we identified 5 key Lunark clients whose contracts were up for renewal within 6 months. Meridian Healthcare was first, but there was also Phoenix Financial, Trace Logistics, Austin Energy Innovations, and Cordova Real Estate Group. Combined, they represented 60% of Lunark's revenue. We incorporated Echelon Core in Delaware, better legal protections. Linda's idea. Our website went live in a week, clean and professional, highlighting our team's experience without mentioning where we'd gained it. The masterstroke was our advisory board, 3 respected industry veterans who'd watched Lunark's descent with disgust, lending their names to our credibility. Then came the emails, not to CEOs or procurement departments, but to the frustrated project managers and technical leads at client companies. The ones who actually dealt with Lunark's failures, the ones Sarah kept accidentally CCing on internal complaint threads. I heard you're having delivery issues with your current vendor, I wrote to Meridian's head of digital transformation. We specialize in rescue projects. The first response came within hours, then another, then 5 more. We didn't badmouth Lunark, that would have been amateur. Instead, we offered free project assessments, comprehensive audits that happened to highlight everything their current vendor was doing wrong. When Meridian's team saw our analysis of their failed implementation, the CTO actually cursed out loud in the meeting. "You're telling me we've been paying for enterprise architecture and they've been giving us WordPress plugins held together with duct tape?" "I'm not telling you anything," I replied calmly. "The code speaks for itself." Our first contract came exactly 6 weeks after my termination. Phoenix Financial, a smaller player but desperate for competent delivery. $200,000 for a 6-month engagement. Enough to keep us alive and hire 3 more developers. All former Lunark employees who'd been encouraged to explore other opportunities. The beauty was we didn't have to steal anyone. They came to us like refugees from a burning building. Every week, another resignation letter hit Lunark's HR department. Their recruiters couldn't fill positions fast enough. And the ones they did hire quickly discovered the toxic reality behind the ping-pong tables and free snacks. I kept a spreadsheet, tracking the exodus. By month 3, 38 people had left Lunark. 22 joined Echelon Core. The others scattered to competitors, taking their knowledge and client relationships with them. Marcus called me once, his voice strained. "Rachel, what you're doing, it's not professional. We trained you, gave you opportunities. You gave me clarity," I interrupted. "You showed me exactly how not to run a company. Consider it my graduation." He threatened legal action, but we'd been careful. No NDAs violated, no proprietary information stolen. Just talented people choosing to work elsewhere, and clients choosing better service. The invisible hand of the market giving Lunark the finger. Late one night, Linda found me in our makeshift office, a co-working space in East Austin we'd rented with our Phoenix Financial deposit. I was staring at my laptop, watching Lunark's Glassdoor rating plummet in real time. Another scathing review had just posted, "Management treats employees like disposable assets while enriching themselves." "You know what the best part is?" Linda said, handing me a beer. "We're not destroying them. We're just refusing to prop them up anymore." She was right. Lunark had built their empire on the backs of people they'd discarded. Now those backs were carrying a different load, and their empire was learning what it felt like to stand on its own merit. "Not a team player," I murmured, raising my beer. "Damn right. Chess was my father's game. Every Sunday until I was 18, we'd sit across from each other, and he'd teach me patience. The best move, he'd say, is the one your opponent doesn't see coming until it's too late to counter." I thought about him often during month 4 of Echelon Core's existence, as we played a slower, more deliberate game than anyone at Lunark could comprehend. The intelligence network came together organically, Sarah still inside, feeding us timing, former employees at competitor companies sharing market insights, clients who'd been burned, quietly spreading word about the alternative. We didn't need corporate espionage. Lunark was broadcasting their vulnerabilities like a distress signal. Their quarterly investor call was a masterpiece of creative fiction. James Thornton painted a picture of temporary market adjustments and strategic right-sizing. What he didn't mention was that their development pipeline had collapsed. 3 major contracts were under legal review, and their CFO had just resigned to pursue other interests. Linda laughed when she heard that one. She knew exactly what interests he was pursuing. The FBI had been asking questions. We positioned ourselves carefully, never the cheapest option, but always the most transparent. Our proposals included detailed breakdowns of actual costs, realistic timelines, and something revolutionary in our industry, penalty clauses for our own underperformance. Clients loved it. They'd been burned by promises for so long, they'd forgotten what accountability looked like. The Meridian healthcare opportunity came through Sarah's carefully orchestrated incompetence. Not sabotage, she was too smart for that. She simply documented everything. Every impossible deadline, every scope change without budget adjustment. Every time Marcus promised something the team couldn't deliver. When Meridian's patience finally snapped, she made sure their project manager had my direct number. I met with Meridian's executive team in their downtown Austin offices, 40 floors up with views of the Colorado River. Their CEO, Diana Walsh, Was the kind of woman who'd climbed corporate ladders in heels and a smile while harboring a spine of tungsten steel. "We're 3 months behind schedule and 2 million over budget," she said without preamble. "Lunark keeps promising fixes, but my technical team tells me the entire architecture is fundamentally flawed. Can you save it?" I opened my laptop, pulled up the analysis Miguel and his team had prepared. "No, but we can build you what you actually need for less than you'll spend trying to fix their mess." She leaned back, studying me. "You're former Lunark, aren't you? Several of your team members are." "Yes." "Is this revenge?" I met her gaze directly. "This is business. Revenge would be telling you about the backdoors in your current system that are leaking patient data to offshore servers. Business is offering to fix it." The color drained from her face. "What?" I showed her the security audit Miguel had run, with her IT director's permission. Of course, the vulnerabilities were staggering. Lunark had been so focused on appearing functional that they'd neglected basic security protocols. HIPAA violations that could cost millions in fines. "How long have you known about this?" Diana's voice was deadly quiet. 48 hours. We wanted to verify before bringing it to your attention. Your IT director has the full report." She stood, walked to the window, hands clasped behind her back. The silence stretched for a full minute before she spoke again. "Lunark has a 5-year contract with us. Breaking it will cost us penalties." "Unless they're in breach," I said quietly. "Section 47.3 of your agreement requires them to maintain industry-standard security protocols. They haven't. Your legal team can void the contract by end of business today." Dinah turned, a slight smile playing at her lips. "You've read our contract?" "Public filing. You're a publicly traded company. Due diligence is just good business." She called her legal team in. By sunset, we had a letter of intent for a 3-year, $8 million contract, our largest by far, enough to hire 15 more people and move to real offices. But the true artistry came from Thomas's contribution. He'd maintained relationships with enterprise software vendors, the ones who provided platforms Lunark resold with massive markups. Over drinks and careful conversations, he'd planted seeds of doubt about Lunark's financial stability. Vendors started requiring payment upfront. Credit lines tightened. The company that had operated on float for years suddenly needed actual cash. I watched from our new offices, a converted warehouse in East Austin with exposed brick and actual windows, as Lunark's empire contracted in real time. Their Austin headquarters, once buzzing with 300 employees, now had entire floors sitting empty. The parking lot that used to overflow by 9 a.m. was half full, even at peak hours. Marcus called again. This time, he tried a different approach. "Rachel, we could work together. Strategic partnership. You take the contracts you want. We provide infrastructure support. Win-win. Like the win-win when you fired me for doing my job." That was James's call. He's stepping down. The board wants fresh leadership. They want someone who understands the technical side. I almost felt sorry for him. Almost. "Marcus, you're offering to rearrange deck chairs on the Titanic. I'm already on a different ship. This is vindictive. You're destroying people's livelihoods." "No," I said, looking out at my team, former Lunark refugees now building something real. "I'm offering them better ones." The call ended with Marcus's frustrated silence. 3 days later, Sarah submitted her resignation. She started at Echelon Core the following Monday, bringing with her 4 more developers who'd finally had enough. The chess game was entering its endgame, and Lunark was running out of pieces to sacrifice. They just didn't know they were already in check. The unraveling started with a single thread, a disgruntled contractor in Bangladesh who hadn't been paid in 3 months. He posted on Reddit, sharing screenshots of his work for Lunark, work that had been billed to clients as premium local development. The tech community picked it up within hours. By morning, it was on Hacker News. By lunch, TechCrunch was calling for comment. I watched from my office as the story exploded. each revelation pulling another thread loose. The contractor wasn't alone. Dozens came forward, showing how Lunark outsourced 90% of their development while charging clients for Austin-based expertise. The math was damning. Billing $200 per hour for work they paid $15 per hour to deliver. Linda knocked on my door, holding her phone. Austin Business Journal wants a statement from Echelon Corps. No comment, I said. We don't kick corpses. But the media didn't need our input. The story wrote itself. Former employees, emboldened by anonymity, shared their experiences. The GitHub repository someone created, Lunark Lies, documented every false claim in their marketing materials, complete with proof. Their Glassdoor rating hit 1.2 stars, with reviews that read like corporate horror stories. Then came the leak I'd been expecting but hadn't orchestrated. Someone inside Lunark's accounting department, facing their third month of delayed bonuses, decided enough was enough. They sent 18 months of internal financials to the Securities and Exchange Commission and CC'd the Austin American-Statesman. The numbers were worse than even I'd suspected. Executive bonuses while laying off staff, client funds diverted to personal investments, a Cayman Islands subsidiary that existed only to wash money. James Thornton had been pulling 7 figures while claiming the company needed to tighten belts. I was reviewing contracts when Diana Walsh from Meridian called. Have you seen the news? Which part? The FBI raid on Lunark's offices this morning. I pulled up the newsfeed. There it was. Federal agents carrying boxes out of the building where I'd spent 8 years of my life. James Thornton in handcuffs, doing the perp walk in his Italian suit. Marcus behind him, head down, lawyer at his side. The headline: Austin tech firm executives arrested in multi-million-dollar fraud scheme. We're issuing a press release, Diana continued, thanking Echelon Corps for identifying critical security vulnerabilities and helping us transition to a secure, compliant solution. Every one of our board members wants to personally thank you. After the call, I sat in silence, waiting to feel something. Satisfaction, vindication, joy. Instead, there was only a hollow sense of completion, like finishing a book you'd been forced to read. Amy found me there an hour later. The team wants to celebrate. We're thinking champagne, maybe that new rooftop bar. They should celebrate, I said. They earned it. But not you. I turned my monitor toward her. On the screen was an email from a recruiter, forwarding a message from someone at Lunark, not management, just a regular developer who joined 6 months ago, fresh from boot camp. He was asking if we had any openings. His tone was desperate. 200 people still work there, I said. Not the executives, not the ones who created this mess, just people who needed jobs. They're all about to be unemployed. Amy sat down across from me. You didn't cause this, Rachel. I accelerated it. You revealed it. There's a difference. That evening, while my team celebrated on 6th Street, I drove to Lunark's offices. The FBI tape was already up. The parking lot empty except for a few cars with employee parking stickers, people who'd shown up to work only to be turned away. One figure sat on the plaza bench where I used to eat lunch. Jennifer from accounting, the one who'd avoided my eyes during my termination. She looked up as I approached, mascara streaked, holding a cardboard box identical to the one I'd carried out months ago. I knew, she said quietly. I processed the invoices. I saw the discrepancies. But I had kids, a mortgage. I thought if I just kept my head down. I sat beside her. We're hiring accountants. She laughed bitterly. Why would you want anyone from there? Because you're not them. You were just trying to survive in their system. I handed her my card. The interview is a formality. Linda already vouched for you. She stared at the card, then at me. I watched them destroy you. I said nothing. And now you get to help build something better. The next morning, the Austin American-Statesman ran a feature on Echelon Corps. They called us the Phoenix Company, built from Lunark's ashes. The reporter had done her homework, connecting the dots between our founding team and our former employer. The headline read, How Austin's blacklisted tech workers built a better future. James Thornton's lawyer released a statement claiming his client was a scapegoat, that he'd been unaware of any wrongdoing. The FBI's response was to add 3 more charges, including wire fraud and conspiracy. The prosecutor mentioned potential sentences of 20 years. I turned off the news and looked around our office. 43 employees now, with applications flooding in from Lunark refugees and others who wanted to work for a company with transparent values. We'd secured 2 more major contracts that week. Companies fleeing Lunark's sinking ship. Thomas stopped by my desk. Phoenix Financial just called. They want to double their contract, take on all of Lunark's work with them. Can we handle it? With the team we're building, absolutely. I nodded, then pulled up our company handbook, the one we'd written together, with input from every employee. The first line still made me smile. At Echelon Core, being a team player means having the courage to speak truth to power. Not a team player. They'd meant it as an insult, a scarlet letter to warn other employers. Instead, it had become my badge of honor, my rallying cry, my foundation for something better. The empire hadn't just fallen, it had been replaced. The call came on a Tuesday. 6 months after the FBI raid, I was reviewing our quarterly projections. Echelon Core had just crossed $50 million in contracted revenue when my assistant knocked. Rachel, there's a James Thornton on line 1. I stared at the phone. Federal prison apparently allowed calls to former employees you'd tried to destroy. I picked up. Rachel. His voice had lost its commanding tone, replaced by something thin and desperate. I need you to testify. The prosecution already has my deposition. Not for them, for me, as a character witness. The audacity almost made me laugh. Character witness, James, you fired me for having character. I'm looking at 15 years minimum. My lawyers say if I can show I wasn't entirely malicious, if former employees testify that I had positive qualities. You want me to lie under oath? No, just remember the good times, the innovation we drove, the opportunities we created. You grew at Lunark. Rachel. Surely that counts for something. I leaned back, watching Austin's skyline through my window. 6 months ago, I might have hung up immediately. Now, I felt only curiosity about his delusion. James, do you know what Lunark's legacy actually is? Silence. 43 of your former employees work here now. They show up early, stay late, not because they have to, but because they finally believe in what they're building. Jennifer from accounting smiles now. Did you know she hadn't smiled at work in 3 years? Sarah just led a project that Meridian's CEO called revolutionary. These people aren't just surviving, they're thriving. That's my point, he interrupted. I gave them the experience. You gave them trauma that they transformed into wisdom. Don't confuse the disease with the cure. The line went quiet before he spoke again, smaller now. They're freezing my assets. My wife left. My kids won't speak to me. I just need someone to say I wasn't a complete monster. You weren't a monster. James, monsters are extraordinary. You were just another executive who thought the rules didn't apply to him. That's not evil. It's pathetic. I hung up. The next morning brought better news. Austin Energy Innovations, Lunark's second-largest remaining client, wanted to meet. Their CEO, Robert Huang, had been watching our work with Meridian and Phoenix Financial. The meeting was just a formality. Sarah had already architected a solution that would save them $2 million annually. But the real victory came from an unexpected source. The Austin Technology Council wanted to present Echelon Core with their Innovation in Ethics Award. The ceremony would be at the same convention center where, 2 years ago, James had accepted an award for Executive of the Year. Linda helped me write the acceptance speech. We went through 17 drafts before I realized what was wrong. I'm trying not to mention Lunark, I told her. But that's dishonest. We exist because they failed. So mention them, she said. Own it. The night of the ceremony, our entire team attended. The former Lunark employees wore subtle pins, chess pawns that Sarah had designed, representing how we'd been treated and what we'd become. The most powerful pieces when we reached the other side of the board, standing at the podium, looking out at an audience of Austin's tech elite. I thought about the girl who'd been escorted from Lunark's building with a cardboard box. Echelon Corps exists because 57 people were told they weren't team players, I began. We were too direct, too honest, too unwilling to enable systematic failures. We were fired, forced out, or driven to resign by a culture that mistook compliance for collaboration. The room was silent. But here's what happens when you exile everyone with integrity. They find each other. They build something better, not out of revenge, but out of necessity. Because the market doesn't just need innovation, it needs honest innovation, transparent pricing, realistic timelines, security that actually secures. I found Diana Walsh in the audience, nodding. We didn't set out to replace our former employer. We set out to be the company our clients deserved and our employees needed. The fact that this made us successful while they collapsed isn't karma, it's economics. When you build on lies, the foundation eventually cracks. When you build on truth, even uncomfortable truth, you build something that lasts. The applause started slowly, then grew. But I wasn't finished. To every person who's been told they don't fit the culture, who's been punished for asking hard questions, who's been labeled difficult for having standards, you're not the problem. You're the solution waiting to happen. Later, at the reception, a young woman approached me. She worked at a different tech firm, one with similar issues to Lunark. I've been documenting everything, she whispered. Just like you did, 12 of us are ready to leave. Could you mentor us? I handed her my card. First lesson, don't wait as long as I did. The best time to build something better is before you've lost yourself trying to fix something broken. As the evening wound down, I stood on the convention center balcony, looking toward downtown. Lunark's old offices were dark. The company liquidated, its assets sold to pay legal fees and settlements. In a different light, it might have looked like victory. But I knew better. This wasn't about winning or losing. It was about transformation. They'd fired me for not being a team player. And in doing so, they'd taught me the most valuable lesson of my career. Sometimes the most important team you can build is the one that forms in exile. Not a team player, I murmured to the Austin skyline, raising my champagne glass to the dark windows of Lunark's ghost. Thank you for that. 1 year to the day after my termination, Echelon Corps signed the contract that would become Austin Business Legend. Meridian Healthcare didn't just want us as a vendor, they wanted to acquire us for $350 million. The offer came with one condition. I had to stay on as president of digital innovation for at least 2 years. I called an all-hands meeting in our warehouse office. The exposed brick now covered with awards, client testimonials, and a framed photo Sarah had taken of our first team meeting at Cosmic Coffee. 67 faces looked back at me. Former Lunark refugees, fresh graduates who believed in our mission, and industry veterans tired of the old way. We started this company with $170,000 and 17 bitter people, I said. The acquisition offer values each of your equity shares at an average of $2.3 million. The silence lasted exactly 3 seconds before Jennifer from accounting started crying. Thomas was calculating on his phone, eyes widening. Sarah just sat there, stunned. The kid who'd whispered, "I'm sorry," now a millionaire before 30. We voted. Unanimous. Yes. The signing ceremony was held in Meridian's boardroom, the same one where Diana Walsh had first heard about Lunark's security disasters. As I signed my name, Diana leaned over. "You know what sealed this deal?" she whispered. "It wasn't your technology or your team, though both are exceptional. It was that you built a company that could survive losing you. That's the difference between ego and leadership." 3 blocks away, the old Lunark building was being converted into condos. The developer had kept the lobby's marble floors but removed everything else, including the wall where my Project Director of the Year photo had hung. James Thornton was serving 12 years in federal prison, his earliest release date somewhere in his 70s. Marcus had pled guilty to lesser charges, receiving 5 years and a lifetime ban from serving as a corporate officer. The Austin American-Statesman ran a feature on the acquisition with the headline, "The Revenge Company That Became an Empire." They'd interviewed former Lunark employees, clients, even a few executives who'd escaped prosecution. One quote stood out. From a middle manager who'd survived the collapse, Rachel Whitmore didn't destroy Lunark, she just stopped preventing its self-destruction. But the moment that defined everything came later that evening. I was packing up my office when my phone rang. Unknown number, but the area code was familiar. "Ms. Whitmore, this is Patricia Thornton, James's daughter." I braced myself for anger, accusations, threats. "I wanted to thank you," she said instead. "My father was destroying himself and everyone around him for years. Prison is horrible, but it stopped him. He's in therapy now. Real therapy. He wrote me a letter last week, the first honest thing he's said to me in a decade." "I didn't." "You did exactly what someone should have done years ago. You said no. You refused to enable him. And when he punished you for it, you built something that proved integrity isn't weakness." After the call, I walked to my car through Austin's downtown, past the bars filling with tech workers, the food trucks serving Korean tacos, the street musicians playing for tips. This city had watched me fall and rise, had provided both the system that tried to crush me and the community that helped me rebuild. My phone buzzed with a text from Sarah. "Team dinner at Franklin's. We're buying you all the brisket you can eat." I smiled, remembering my termination day, sitting in my car, screaming at the injustice. That woman felt like a stranger now. Not because I'd changed, but because I'd finally become who I'd always been. Just without the corporate muzzle. At Franklin's, surrounded by my team, my real team, someone asked the inevitable question, "What's next?" "We've got 2 years to transform Meridian's entire digital infrastructure," I said. "After that, maybe I'll write a book, How to Get Fired and Thank Them Later." Linda raised her beer. "To not being team players. To building better teams," I countered. We clinked bottles, 67 people who'd been told they weren't good enough, now worth more than the company that had discarded them. The ultimate notch karma move, as the internet had dubbed it. Later, alone on my apartment balcony, I pulled up LinkedIn one last time. Lunark Systems page still existed, marked "Company Permanently Closed." Below it, hundreds of comments from former employees and clients. A digital gravestone for corporate hubris. I closed the laptop and looked out at Austin's lights, thinking about chess, about patience, about the long game that starts the moment someone tells you you're not good enough. They'd been right about one thing. I wasn't a team player. I was a team builder. And I'd built one hell of a team. The city sparkled below, full of companies making the same mistakes Lunark had made, full of employees being told they didn't fit the culture, full of James Thorntons believing their own lies. Tomorrow, more cardboard boxes would be carried through corporate lobbies. More not team players would be escorted out by security. And some of them would remember this story. Some of them would realize that being fired isn't an ending, it's an invitation to build something better. They said I couldn't work well with others. They were wrong. I just couldn't work well with assholes. Thank you for listening to this story of corporate karma and sweet revenge. Where are you listening from? Drop a comment below and let's connect. I'd love to hear if you've ever been called not a team player and what you did about it. Don't forget to subscribe to the channel and share your thoughts. Sometimes the best revenge really is massive success.